This is going to be a brief introduction to the macro indicators you're going to learn more in depth on later. So one of the first measures of the entire country's economy is how much do they produce, the national output. So how productive is our country or other countries, and we can use this to compare countries and how productive they are in terms of total production. It's measured a lot of different ways, but we really focus on real GDP. Real referring to the fact that it's going to account for inflation, and we'll talk about that later. GDP, meanwhile, is the market value of all final goods and services produced in a country in a given time period. So one of the major indicators we look at, not just in this class, but economists as well, is they look at, well, how productive is the country? What's their national output? Another key macroeconomic indicator is inflation. And what that seeks to measure is how much money do you need to keep your current standard of living? Kind of the idea of your status quo. So if you buy X number of clothes per year and X number of food per year, and you kind of add all that stuff that you would typically buy, next year, how much more is that going to cost you, or will it cost you the same? So that's why consumers care about it, and these price changes are important because it tells you, how much is it going to cost for you to live next year or the year after or compared to prior years. So we typically measure the inflation rate as the consumer price index because it keeps track of a basket of goods that a typical consumer might buy. So it's much more relevant to us as consumers to use CPI than PPI or some of the other indicators of inflation like GDP deflator. The last one, and probably most important to consumers or households, is the unemployment rate. And what the unemployment rate is a measure of the percentage of the workforce that don't have a job. So unemployment is the most important indicator for consumers because GDP and inflation, while nice indicators for a consumer, not an economist, it doesn't really mean much if you don't have a job. So we look at the unemployment rate because that helps to kind of fill out the picture. And once we have all three of these indicators, we get a pretty good sense of the economy very concisely in just, like I said, three indicators. Now, the three that I've just talked about are all lagging indicators because they tell us where the economy has been, not where they're going. Now, there are lots of what we call leading indicators that try to predict the future, but ultimately predicting the future, even in the economy with all of the science and all the technology we have, isn't going to help us predict fully where the economy is going. And the leading indicators include things like producer price index, consumer confidence index, and the durable goods report. We don't really get a whole lot into those, but the idea that there are indicators out there that try to predict where the economy is going for various reasons.